Tonight, we're going to answer this one question. How? How did we get here? And how is it that we never saw this coming? We'll do that next. As we did some research on a show we did, I don't know, last week or the week before on Edward Bernays, we went for some of our studies to this book, Corporate Public Relations, A New Historic Perspective. The author is Marvin Olasky. He's the editor-in-chief of World Magazine, and he actually interviewed Bernays in 1984. How old was he then?
92.
92. And this is, I don't want to make this into it's not another Bernays special. It's to show you how things are being done right now based on his 4 principles. That man, and really this was part of his uncle's idea of, you know, Sigmund Freud.
Uncle Sigmund, yes.
That it was sex, men are only driven, man cannot rule himself, right? And so we have to herd him, put him in a corral, which is, I think, a word he actually used in one of the quotes I read in your book. Mm-hmm. You got to put man in a corral, and the elites will just dictate to him.
You do it for his own good.
Yeah, right.
That's the idea.
Sure. Enlightened despotism. So the 4 things are sex, self-preservation, aggression, and security. Okay, so we'll go into that, and I'll show you in a minute how this is all being used today, so you can use reason when you see things back and forth, and you know where the roots are, you know where it comes from. But I want to start someplace else. I want to go back to, can man rule himself, and show the difference between the progressives, the way they answer that question, and the way the founders answer that question. So go ahead.
Sure.
Have at it. He's like, Marvin said, could I use your chalkboard?
Get a chance to use the chalkboard.
Be careful.
Right.
I'll tell the chalkboard later. It's okay. I'm not cheating on you with another professor.
Okay, I'll start with a triangle. Kind of like a triangle. This is the way the founders understood things. They understood that you wanted to slow things down, give people plenty of time to think things through. So they had, at the start, 3 different groups or individuals involved in discussing legislation and what to do. You have the president here. He'd be involved in this whole process. The president, in a way, was a little bit like a king, but a king with a very limited term of office and very limited powers. You have the Senate, which is kind of like an aristocratic body. They would be voted on, elected by state legislatures. They would be considering, deliberating over all the measures that were being discussed.
That was different back when the founders put it together. This is a progressive change. The Senate was originally put in, not by the voters of the people. That's why you have so much money going into, like, let's say, Chris Dodd's campaign from all over the country, because the rest of the country is interested. The founders knew that. And they said the Senate needs to be appointed by the state legislature. And it was like that to protect exactly that it didn't become a United States senator. It was the interest of the state. And the progressives changed that about, what,
1913 or
1913,
so.
yeah.
During the Wilson administration.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Let me just mention one other change. The Senate had a little institution called the filibuster. The filibuster was one person could actually stop legislation, slow it down, give people a chance to consider, to think it through. If any of you saw Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, for example, that's what the filibuster was, one person standing up, perhaps against everyone else. And then, of course, you have the House of Representatives, in a sense, a representation of democracy of the people. So you have a mixed government. You have these 3 aspects: slow it down, think it through. And let's say that some powerful individual arises and he can get, let's say he's the president, he can get the Senate and the House to do his will. You throw a rope around the whole thing. The Supreme Court. Again, opportunity to reconsider, slow it down, think it through, don't rush, don't panic. In case the Supreme Court doesn't come through, you have another rope around the whole thing. And these were the state legislatures, at a time when the state legislatures actually had a lot of authority And the idea was everything, you didn't go to Washington for everything, you actually went to Springfield or Annapolis or other state capitals. And then here's what, as a journalism professor for many years, I really enjoy doing. The final check in this check and balance system is a free press. And this is why we have the First Amendment. This is why journalists actually have certain special rights, because they were considered as very, very important to keep dictators from having their way.
Did the president at the time of the founding, did he have an executive power? Did he could just make an executive order?
No, executive orders, no. This is why you have Congress. Congress does things. You don't do executive orders.
Watch this, America. Here's how they have changed this. Through executive order, they've changed his role. They've changed the filibuster, and they've changed the Senate, the protection of each state. Then the circle is the Supreme Court, and that's still there. Then you have the circle of, what was the second one?
State legislature.
State, which, because of Wilson administration, that's now gone. And you see the media not doing their job. And all infiltrated and all done starting around the turn of the century.
Sure.
Okay.
And growing throughout the whole century until we get to the point where you can have a bill that's a huge number of pages and people will pass it without even reading it, and we're all told, well, we'll tell you about it once we pass it. We'll tell you what's in it once it's already legislation. That's not the way the founders intended things to be. Here's the system essentially that we work under now, and here's where Edward Bernays had a big effect in helping to develop the idea of public relations or propaganda. Right now, you have the idea that people in fact cannot rule themselves. Well, here, I'll do little drawings here. Here's a person, and he's frowning. He's very unhappy. Here are other people, and in fact, they're screaming. What? The sky is falling. We can't do anything. We're helpless. Help us. It's an emergency. We must do something right away. We don't know what to do. I could draw more little people, but of course, you would tell me, don't give up your day job, and so forth. There's chaos, in other words. But, oh, happy day. We have, and this is what Edward Bernays, the founder of public relations, called a human God. Bernays was an atheist. He believed that there is no God, there is no providence, there's no one to help us. We have to invent human gods, and we have to pledge our allegiance to them.
When you listen to this, think of George Soros, the episode we did on George Soros, who in his own words has said, I'm like a human God, I'm a God, and I'm experimenting.
But the human gods are not necessarily the brightest people around. They're not necessarily the people who really understand anything to do. They may be very good-looking people. They may be athletic people. They may be stars in a lot of ways, but they're not the ones who are really deciding how we should live, what we should do. And this is Edward Bernays. Above the human gods, you basically have manipulators. You have Bernays himself, who, as we'll talk about, was involved in a whole lot of things to change how people lived, how people ate, who you voted for.
Right. And this is the Cass Sunsteins of the world now. They're the ones who say a little bit of Homer Simpson exists in everybody and we can manipulate him. Or as Bernays said, I love this, it might be better to have, instead of propaganda and special pleading, committees of wise men who would choose our rulers, dictate our conduct, private and public, decide upon what best type of clothes for us to wear and the best kind of food for us to eat. Broccoli, no trans fats. I mean, you're seeing it. You're seeing it now. And when we come back, we're going to show you how politicians in Washington use one of the 4 ways to herd people as cows, security, and get them to do amazing things. Back in a second.
Our economy is in a crisis.
If we drag our feet and fail to act, this crisis could turn into a catastrophe.
This legislation will lead to healthier lives.
legislation that will provide stability and security for Americans who have insurance, quality, affordable options for those who don't.
The Green Revolution is the solution to the financial crisis, the national security crisis.
Childhood obesity isn't just a public health issue, it is a national security threat as well.
Our kids are running out of time. It's critically important to the health and success of our kids.
You get sick, America, the Republican health care plan is this: die quickly.
The planet has a fever.
The threat from climate change is serious, it is urgent, and it is growing. If we did not act, we might face a second depression. So we acted immediately and aggressively. These numbers demand action. Now is the time for Congress to act. Too many of you not only can't afford to provide health insurance to your employees, too many of you are having a tough time just affording health insurance for yourselves.
If you could see the effect we are having on our planet, you'd do something about it.
Tick, 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 tick. Our future is up to you.
We face a convergence of crises, all of which are a concern for life.
I think the stimulus package is well conceived. A lot of it puts money in people's hands.
We need a big stimulus package that will jolt the economy back into shape.
There is a serious crisis here. It's as if, the patient's arteries are clogged and he'll get a heart attack unless we do something.
You know what, guys? If you eat all of these healthy foods, you're going to grow up to be big and strong, just like me.
We're talking with Marvin Orlasky. He is the editor-in-chief of World Magazine. He interviewed Bernays, Edward Bernays, the father of propaganda, which later became public relations. And what caught my eye is how everybody is asking for chaos. Everybody who wants a revolution or wants violence wants chaos. Mm-hmm. And his public relations theory, I love, the name of it is Order Out of Chaos.
Or never let a good crisis go to waste.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. I want to go to the audience because they have, quite honestly, I think they have many of my questions. But let me start here. I have to ask you, first of all, you were a communist, right? I was. Okay, and you went over to Russia and...
in 1972.
Okay, so you were like full-fledged, you were Bill Ayers era.
Yeah.
Yeah, were you into the whole revolution, take down the state and...
Yeah, in a different way than Bill Ayers, but parallel. Yeah.
Very few people, thank God, that are like Bill Ayers. You went over, had an awakening, and said, wow, this is tripe.
Yeah, actually, and here's the sad thing, it was a delayed awakening. When I was there, I saw problems, but I always tried to figure out a way to justify it. But it really wasn't until I started reading the Bible and thinking things through that I saw, here's the alternative.
So you had enlightenment.
Indeed.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so, but you are also known kind of as the godfather of the idea of compassionate conservatism.
I guess that's true.
Which I'm not a fan of.
All right.
Because conservatives, I would say that Ben Franklin was a conservative who came out and said the best way to help people is make them uncomfortable in their poverty. And yet he started the first public hospital. So he was wildly conservative. He just didn't think it should be done through the government. Yeah. And sometimes pain is the best way to help people who won't help themselves.
Yeah.
How do you, you just said this, you're a small government guy, you're not a progressive?
No.
Okay. How did you get to compassionate conservatism, which is...
Well, because compassionate conservatism is supposed to be, and originally it was in the 90s as we were developing the theory, it's decentralizing. It's Benjamin Franklin. It's people, well, the hospitals, as you know, were largely created by Christians.